Now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That's the go-getter energy that moves anyone to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. We put all this together in one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one book, one audio masterclass, and one show. That's the one you're listening to right now. It is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. Today's topic is turning your excuses into reasons. So this episode is about the mental alchemy of taking a circumstance or situation which you may not be able to control nor alter, but deciding instead of trying to control or alter a situation, which you probably can't do, or throwing your hands up and just giving up because you can't control or alter the situation, but instead deciding to take control over the small percentage of life which you do control, which is the way that you decide to look at and adjust to and address a situation from the inside out. You always have control over that. Many a great accomplishment in life by some human being happened not because that person found a way to control circumstances or change a situation to their liking, because none of us can do that most of the time. It was only because a person faced a situation that looked like a surefire cause for failure, or one that would be a surefire cause for failure for most people, but instead that person turned that situation into fuel to succeed. They took a situation that many people would have looked at as an absolute, all right, I'm just going to fail in this situation, or somewhere where they would just give up, or something that just wasn't going to work for whatever reason. Maybe it already wasn't working for whatever reason, but they say, you know what, I'm not going to let this situation keep me down. I'm going to turn this situation around, not because they found a way to control circumstances, but because they decided to take full control over themselves, starting with the way that they thought about the situation. If you're a basketball fan, you remember the 2016 NBA Finals. That was the Cleveland Cavaliers facing the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors were, at that time, they still held the best regular season record in the history of the NBA. Out of 82 games, they won 73 of those games. That's the best record still to this day any team has ever achieved during an NBA regular season. They were about to be crowned the greatest team maybe for one season in the history of the NBA, even better than the 96 Chicago Bulls, who won 72 games, but the Bulls won the championship. The Cleveland Cavaliers were down 3-1. The Cleveland Cavaliers had a very good team. LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love. This is a very good team, but they just happened to run into a buzzsaw in these Golden State Warriors. The Warriors had them down 3-1. The Warriors had the MVP of the league and Stephen Curry on the team, unanimous MVP Stephen Curry, a great defender in Draymond Green, another all-star in Klay Thompson. They had a great coach in Steve Kerr. They were the defending champions already, had beaten the Cavs the year before, and this looked like there was just going to be a royal ass-kicking that the Warriors are going to give the Cavs, and they were through 4 games. But then the last 3 games of the series, the Cavs were able to turn that situation around. They were able to turn what could have been an excuse. Hey, we're playing against the greatest regular season team in the history of the league. Steph Curry just won the MVP for the 2nd year in a row. They got this great team. They have everything going in their favor. I mean, of course we're going to lose this series. They could have used that as their excuse to lose the NBA Finals, but instead they found a way to turn those excuses into reasons. Came back from a 3-1 deficit and won the 2016 NBA championship. Some of you probably remember that. Michael Jordan in 1995, he returned to basketball after a brief hiatus to play baseball. Came back to the Bulls at the end of the regular season. The Bulls were still a pretty strong team. Put Michael Jordan on them. They became a very, very good team. Went to the 2nd round of NBA playoffs. Were facing the Orlando Magic. Michael Jordan realized, or he found out in the process of that series, that he was no longer quote-unquote Michael Jordan. Couldn't pull the magic out of it. Couldn't pull the rabbit out of his hat as easily as he used to before. The Bulls ended up losing to Orlando Magic in the 95 NBA playoffs. And the Magic had 2 young and very, very talented and very, very promising players in Shaquille O'Neal and another guy by the name of Penny Hardaway, who's the coach at the University of Memphis college basketball right now. But those 2 guys with that whole Orlando Magic roster looked like they were the future of the NBA. And Michael Jordan and the company, those guys were old news. You guys won your championships, but that's over. Now is our time. At least that's what it seemed like the conversation was between the Orlando Magic and the Chicago Bulls. But we know what happened after that. Well, if you don't, I'll tell you, Michael Jordan rededicated himself and his teammates followed his lead. And the Bulls came back and they won the next 3 NBA championships. And that Orlando Magic team did not win any championships, despite the fact that they had this young and promising and very talented core group of players. Kanye West, another guy. Oh yeah, before I even get to Kanye, Michael Jordan, the whole point that I'm making here is he could have used that as an excuse. Listen, I won 3 championships already. I was rusty coming back from baseball. This Orlando team, they had this big guy in Shaq. They got this guard in Penny Hardaway. They're the future of the league. We're old guys. Our time may have already passed. It could be over. He could have used that as his excuse or his reason to fade into the background in the basketball scene. But instead, he was able to turn that excuse, what would have been an excuse, into a reason to rededicate himself and get his teammates to rededicate. And they came back and won the next 3 championships. Kanye West was a guy who, when he first came into the hip hop scene, at least to be known, were nationally known and then internationally known in the hip hop scene, he was not respected as a rapper because Kanye did not fit the profile of what people saw as a rapper back then. We're talking the early 2000s. And back then, to be a rapper, you were probably rapping about something that was going on in the streets, some type of drugs or violence or disrespectful language towards women, or what some women could take as disrespectful. Or you had on some baggy jeans, you had on a throwback jersey. This is the way that rappers looked and the way that rappers presented themselves at the time. And Kanye was not and still is not any of those things. He doesn't rap about drugs, guns, violence, or not too many things about women. He wasn't wearing baggy jeans. He didn't have on a jersey. He was wearing pink polo shirts and Louis Vuitton backpacks, and people hadn't seen that then. Now it's normal, but back then people hadn't seen it. So he could have used that as his excuse when the rest of the rap industry looked at him and said, I mean, who the hell are you? Who is this? What is this that you're wearing? How are you presenting yourself? We're not sure we can take you seriously as somebody who's going to lead anything in rap music. He could have took that as his excuse to just give up on rapping and, I don't know, go do something else, maybe just be a producer and stick to producing. But instead, he kept pressing his belief, his message, his idea that he was a person to be taken serious in rap. He actually had a line in one of his songs in his first album. He said, I could let these dream killers kill my self-esteem or use my arrogance as a steam to power my dreams. And that's the exact message that I want you to get out of what we're going to talk about here in today's class, which, again, the topic is turning your excuses into reasons. Let me give you another example. Steve Jobs, the guy who created the device that you're probably listening to this on right now, or that you're typing away on while you're listening to me right now. And after several years after creating this company called Apple, Steve Jobs got kicked out of his own company. His company went public. They had shareholders, they had a board of directors, and Steve Jobs ended up losing a power struggle, getting ousted from the very company that he had started. Now, how many of you, if you started a company, if we have any business owners listening to this, imagine you got kicked out of the company that you run right now. Like, how would you feel? You'd probably be devastated. You might be hell-bent on revenge. You might be pissed off. You might want to kick somebody's ass. You might want to just give up on everything. You get kicked out of your own company. That's what happened to Steve Jobs. And he could have given up. He could have just quit on life. But instead, after a period of not feeling so great about himself and about circumstances, he rededicated himself to just figuring out who he was as a person, what his passions were, what he really wanted to do. He went and did some other things, created a company called Pixar, which you probably have heard of by now. Pixar did great, and eventually Apple, that same company that had kicked him out, they were falling on hard times. They needed some help. They turned to a few other people before they ended up turning back to Steve Jobs and say, hey, Steve, could you come back and help us, help save the very company that you started, that we kicked you out of a few years ago? Steve Jobs came back, did some other things, and the rest became history. Now we're still using Apple products to this day. Today, what you're going to learn about is how to turn the dire circumstances of your life, the same way that Kanye West, Michael Jordan, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and Steve Jobs did, turn the dire circumstances of your lives into the very fuel, the exact thing that is you could be using as a reason to not feel great is going to be the exact thing that gives you the reason to feel amazing, and turn that energy around to turn what looks like a loss into a win. You got all that? Let's get into it. Today's topic, once again, is turning your excuses into reasons. Point number 1. Remember that all situations in life are neutral situations. There is no such thing as a bad situation or a negative circumstance. There's no such thing as a good situation or a good circumstance. Every circumstance, situation is neutral. You have the choice as to how you'll look at a situation, and how you choose to look at a situation is what makes it, in your mind, a good thing or a bad thing or no thing whatsoever. All situations, especially the ones that you don't want, they all contain energy. This is the thing that you need to understand. With all situations being neutral, none of them is good or bad. It's only good or bad based on the way you choose to look at it. But every situation contains energy within it, because the circumstances you're looking at, there's a set of, we'll just call it a set of circumstances that makes the situation what it is. Your job is to identify the energy within that situation, whether it's energy that you want or energy that you don't want, and you can learn to turn that energy, however polarized that energy may be, turn that energy in the direction that you wish to use it, and then use that energy for your own purposes. So, for example, if you have some people in a certain situation who are throwing some negative energy towards you, they're hostile towards you. Just because people are being negative towards you, it doesn't have to be cause for despair. It doesn't have to be cause for you to quit. And you don't have to match their negative energy in such a way that is not really going to produce a result for you. What you need to ask yourself is, how can I take these people's negative energy and use it to actually produce the outcome that I wish to produce? Now, first you need to know what your outcome is. And once you know what your outcome is, you can say, listen, those people's negativity is going to be the very energy that I use to push myself to want to win that much more. That's going to push me to wake up earlier, to stay up later, to make sure I get everything done properly, to make sure that I don't make any mistakes, to make sure that I'm really on point, me and whoever's on my side, really on point for doing what we need to do, so there's no possible way that we could come up short in this situation. You can take people's negative energy and just use it that way to work for you, rather than allowing people's negative energy to work against you. I want you to notice the wording of what I just said there. Using people's negative energy to work for you, rather than, here's the key word, allowing people's negative energy to work against you. If you are in a situation where, let's say you're in some form of competition where the last time you were in that competition, you lost. So let's say you lost your last basketball game, or you're the Cleveland Cavaliers, you're down 3-1, or you're Michael Jordan, you got eliminated from the playoffs. You lost the last time around, and what you're doing, that loss could be the setup for your comeback the next time. That loss and the fact that everybody's pointing at you and ridiculing you for losing last time could be the exact energy. That energy, that ridicule that people are sending your way, you can use that energy to motivate you to be ready the next time. Focused, sharp, and ready the next time you come around. You could use the fact that maybe when you lose, nobody's paying attention to you because nobody expected you to win in the first place. And when you lose, everybody's completely ignoring you and forgetting that you were ever even there. You can use the fact that no one's paying attention to you as a motivating factor. Like, now I can really prepare and really get ready for my next time around. And since no one's expecting anything of me, the way that I'm getting ready, the way that I'm preparing, and the way that I'm going to be ready to deliver when I get out there next time, no one's even thinking anything about me. So there are no expectations on me. Nobody's preparing for me. Nobody's thinking that they're going to have to go through me to win. That could be your energy. That could be your reason to win the next time. The fact that nobody's expecting you to win, or the fact that everybody's expecting you to win. Again, it just depends on the way that you want to look at the situation. Both situations are completely neutral, whether everyone's thinking you're going to do something or nobody's thinking anything of you or are even aware that you exist. All of this is in the mind, ladies and gentlemen. How you decide to look at a situation and the story which you decide to tell yourself they're all designed in the mind. Now, we talked about story many times here on this show. I told you just in Masterclass 14-18 how and why to become a great storyteller. And that storyteller, I was really talking about from the sales aspect of things. But in life, we're always telling ourselves a story. Every single day, we have a story in our head that we're telling ourselves about who we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it, why we will do something, why we won't do something, why we feel the way we feel about things. The story that we decide to tell ourselves in our minds is reflected in the lives that we live. So if you want to know what story you've been telling yourself up to this point in your life, just look at the life that you're living. That's a reflection of the story you've been telling. If you want to change your story, and I suggest you listen to Masterclass number 1250. The exact title is How to Change Your Story. Any of you who's in the sales world, all of us are in sales in one form or another. In Masterclass 1212, I told you that price is a story. And the one right before that, Masterclass 1211, how do you know whether you should keep going on something because you're a visionary and it's eventually going to work out, or you should stop going on something because you're delusional and you're doing the wrong thing? The difference between vision and delusion is what happens at the end of the story. That's the exact title of Masterclass number 1211. Again, so you go refer yourself back to those masterclasses if you don't remember everything that I said on them, which you probably don't. And that's why you got full lifetime access if you're a game group member. Point number 2, today's topic. is turning your excuses into reasons. Point number 2, stop allowing life's circumstances to kick your ass. As I already told you in the introduction and in point number 1 here of the show, every situation and circumstance is a neutral thing. All right, none of them are negative, none of them are positive. So whatever circumstance you're facing right now, you don't have to see it as negative. You don't have to allow it to have you down mentally, to have you ready to quit, to have you in a state of despair, have you feeling negatively, have you feeling as if you may never succeed, whatever way you decide to look at those things. You don't have to allow negative energy to overtake your mind just because the circumstance is what it is. Because the circumstance, again, doesn't really care how you feel. The circumstance is just what it is. It's neutral. In masterclass number 119, all the way back to 2016, I'll talk to you about fighting through the tough days of life. We do not control 99% of the circumstances that we deal with in our lives. The 1% of control that we do have reflects how we choose to respond to circumstances. That's the 1% that you control, which the way that we choose to respond to circumstances is 100% mental. It is not physical. Something not working the way that you want it to work, if that's the circumstance you have right now, that does not have to be reason for you to quit, and it should not be reason for you to quit. Because if something's not working the way that you want it to work, what you need to look at that as is data that is telling you something is not set up the right way. Either something's not being executed properly, maybe you're executing properly but in the wrong place, maybe you're executing terribly in the right place, maybe there's just some element of what you're doing is just not set up in the right way. All it is data. When things are not working, you're just getting information. The same way a computer gathers information by looking at every single outcome, good or bad, and adding it to its knowledge base, right? When something's not working for you, it's just information. Use that to inform the next attempt that you make or the next move that you make. When a computer is learning, when the computer is doing its artificial learning or artificial intelligence, all the computer does is test something out, it sees what the outcome is, and the computer says, okay, is this the outcome that I want? Yes or no? And based on its answer, it just adds that information to its knowledge base. So the computer, if the outcome is what the computer wants, then the computer can say, okay, or the program itself will say, okay, when I do this, I get closer to what I want. And if the outcome is not what the program wants, and the computer says, if I do this, I get further away from what I want. All the computer does is just continue to store those outcomes somewhere in its knowledge base to use for its next attempt. But understand that computers and computer programs and code, they don't get emotional. All right, they don't react to situations. They just take in the information, they assess the information. All right, did this help or did this not help? Did this get me closer or further away? And then it stores that information and utilizes it for its next attempt. That's all the computer program does. In this way, you need to train yourself to be as dispassionate as the computer. No emotional reaction. And remember, even though you will not be able to be as dispassionate as a computer all the time because you are a human, it's the mess that is in your message that makes it worth listening to anyway. The fact that you're going to go through some failures, that things will not work out all the time as you wish, the fact that you're going to suffer some setbacks, the fact that there'll be times when you're looking at your situation and wondering what the hell is going wrong, why is this not going the way that I want it to go, the fact that that will happen and there will be some mess in your story, that's what makes the message worth listening to. Nobody wants to hear a message of someone who everything was just perfect. A perfect story with no failures is not a story in the first place. Point number 3, today's topic, turning your excuses into reasons. Let's talk about mental toughness. Don't leave home without it. You know, we just talked about how to have and develop and maintain your mental toughness back in Masterclass 1386. But all mental toughness is a measure of how disciplined and how confident you can remain even when your plans are not working as expected. And I talk about that. I say that every single day when I introduce this masterclass. When your plans are not going the right way, can you still stick to your disciplines and stick to your plan and still believe in yourself? If you can, that is a reflection of mental toughness. If you're not, that's also a reflection of mental toughness. It's a lack thereof. Here's a simple mental toughness strategy for everybody. Take the situations that will cause most people to quit and do the opposite. Now, why would you do that? Because in Masterclass, for a couple reasons. First of all, Masterclass 1025, I told you all the opportunity in life is in the opposite. So if you want to know where some opportunity is, go look around and see what everybody else is doing and do the exact opposite of that. There's opportunity in doing the exact opposite of what everybody else is doing. And there's no competition. The other reason why this is a simple mental toughness strategy is because most people, when they face adverse circumstances, they quit. Most people, when they try something that doesn't work, they quit. Most people, when someone tells them that something's not going to work out, before they even test it out themselves, they quit before they even give it a chance, give it a shot in the first place. So all you have to do is notice what most people do and just don't do that. Now, whatever most people do, do the opposite. So if most people quit, keep going. And most people keep going, quit. So whatever it is most people are doing, because most people are stupid, most people are average, and most people are not going anywhere. So if you want the opposite of those outcomes, you want to be smart, you want to be above average, and you want to go somewhere, just see what quote unquote everybody is doing and don't do that. Do the exact opposite of that, whatever you think that is. Now, there are many people out there in the world who have hopes, dreams, goals, and wishes. Most of those people do not achieve their goals and wishes, and they have great excuses for why they have not achieved them. Your job is to turn those same reasons that most people would use as their excuses for quitting or excuses for coming up short. And most of the time, those reasons are circumstances. They're not decisions. Nobody ever says, well, I failed in life because I just chose to fail. Nobody says that. People say I failed in life because of my mom, because of my boss, because of the weather, because of this bad luck that I had, because of the economy. You notice that? Most of the time when people don't get the outcome that they want, they blame some externality, some situation or circumstance that they believe has caused them to fail at whatever they're trying to do. But the same circumstances or situations that people use as excuses to fail can be the exact same thing that you use as a reason to succeed. You could say, well, look, my mom did this, my coach did that, my boss did this, my coworkers are doing this, the people in my neighborhood were doing that, the economy did this, the industry was this way, and because of that, I knew I had to find a different way. I knew I had to get myself dedicated. I knew I had to really get focused. I knew I had to find an alternative path to achieving my outcome because it wasn't going to happen the way I originally thought. You see how you can just by changing language, you can change what could have been an excuse into a reason. And I did that just off the top of my head, and it took me 10 seconds to do it. You can change your excuses and reasons just that quickly. It's just a matter of choice. And then once you make the choice, you make that decision, then you act on it to turn it into a real decision. Not a real decision until you take action on it. Your job is to turn the same excuses that most people use as reasons to stop and turn those into reasons to come back, regroup, and be even better next time around. Because circumstance happens to everyone, ladies and gentlemen. How you decide to respond to a circumstance is the whole difference between one person and the next person. Let's recap today's topic, which is turning your excuses into reasons. Many a great accomplishment in life has happened simply because some person faced a situation that looks like a surefire cause of failure, and that person instead, or people, turned that situation into fuel to succeed. The Cleveland Cavaliers were down 3-1 to the Golden State Warriors. They used that, could have been an excuse, they turned it into a reason. Michael Jordan lost in the 95 playoffs, turned it into a reason. Kanye West, not respected as a rapper because he didn't look like a rapper, turned it into a reason. Steve Jobs, kicked out of his own company. Imagine that. Turned it into a reason to make that company even greater when he finally came back. And you're learning today how to turn dire circumstances, or what you see as dire circumstances, into the very fuel that you'll use to turn what looks like a loss into a win. Point number one, remember that all situations in life are neutral. You have a choice as to how you look at them. You make them positive or negative. The situation itself is not positive or negative. It is completely impartial. All situations contain energy as well. Your job is to ID the energy that is in a situation and turn it in the direction that you want it to go, to use for your personal purposes. Somebody being negative towards you, there's energy in negativity. Somebody cheering for you, there's energy in positivity. Losing, there's energy in that. Winning, there's energy in that. It's all in the mind. It's based on how you decide to look at the situation and the story that you choose to tell yourself about the situation. Point number two, stop allowing life circumstances to kick your ass. In masterclass number 119, I talk to you about fighting through the tough days. We do not control 99% of circumstances. The 1% that we do control is our response to a circumstance in life. A computer program does not respond emotionally or get all worked up about any outcome, positive or negative. All it does is take it in as data, and it records it and saves it for the next time around. That's the exact same thing you need to do, approaching life in a more dispassionate manner. And even though you will not be 100% dispassionate all the time because you are human, the mess in your life is what makes the message what it is. And I talked about the mess being the message in an earlier masterclass on this show. I told you that in masterclass number 230. Your mess is the message. Point number three, mental toughness. Don't leave home without it. Mental toughness is a measure of how disciplined and confident you will remain even when your plans are not working. So a simple mental toughness strategy, since I talk about it every day at the top of the show, take the situations that would cause most people to quit and do the opposite of that. All right, Masterclass 1025, I told you the opportunities and the opposites in life. Many people have goals, hopes, and wishes. Most people never achieve them. All you have to do is take the same things that most people use as excuses and turn those into your reasons to succeed. The obstacle becomes the way. Shout out to Ryan Holiday. Work on your game. Dre, all